I didn't know how this was going to go this morning because it's a subject I've been talking to you around, and I've hit it a few times, but I I've pulled back from it with talking to people and even to you because it is so it's out of this world.
Hmm.
And my plan, I didn't tell you this, but we talked about the plan. I just didn't tell you that it was my plan, which seemed to be consistent with your plan too,
Yeah.
was to build a foundation for people, showing them things about the Word of God that they don't know, most
Hmm.
likely.
Hmm.
And that when you go to preaching, teaching, hearing, whatever, um, people don't address these things directly. Once in a while, somebody will touch on some of these subjects. I don't think they realize what they're talking about, but they know there's something significant and that it's true. And people they bounce around. And I I just I when I've been listening to the news a little bit lately, and there's one thing I've told you for years that mankind really only has one problem. Solve this one problem, all the rest of them are solved.
Hmm.
And that is all the fake knowledge, the false knowledge, and the lies that we have believed that control our lives. What we know, not it doesn't matter whether it's true or not, but
Hmm.
what we know and believe is true uh, determines our expectations, which determines what we see and what we don't see, what we feel and don't feel, hear, don't hear, experience and don't experience.
Hmm.
And I've also told you many, many times that there's nothing I can tell you or anyone else that they don't already know.
Right.
Um, and that's why the things that I say mentally for some people they reject it, but yet something in their heart rings and they don't know what to do with it because something seems true, but yet it's so contrary to what they've learned that they don't know what to do. And I've said for a long time, I discovered years ago that when the New Testament talks about the body of knowledge, um, or excuse me, that talks about knowledge, and
Hmm.
or come on, where it talks about body, the body. Paul talks about the body. What he's
Hmm.
referring to is the body of knowledge. It's God has a body of knowledge, and that body of knowledge is true. That um, he knows all that is not true, but it's not part of his body of knowledge. It's not the knowledge out of which he lives, his existence, his beingness.
Okay.
Um, it's just so we've all got a body of knowledge. It's the verse that talks about the body of sin. Okay,
Okay.
the body of
Okay.
sin. Well, as you and I know, that doesn't mean these evil bodies that we live in. It means the body of knowledge of error, because sin, which we're going to get into at some other point, people consider that all the things that they do wrong, the things they think, that feel wrong, whatever. But no, that's not what Paul was talking about. What we're doing, God's God's more interested in what we believe than what we do, because He knows that when we believe the truth like He does, we'll live the truth like He does, and doing wrong will not even be an issue. This is so simple and so easy, and the principle we all live all the time. We
Yep.
can't not live it.
Yep.
Um, and so the, I wanted to build a foundation of the so many incorrect understandings in the Word of God. For instance, hamartia, which is translated sin, But the problem is, as long as you have the right definition for sin, then that would be okay. But it's kind of hard to get there. But in the Greek, and I know that the lexicons, I think I've seen one or two lexicons mention err or error, which is correct. But the overwhelming body of understanding of hamartia is sin and the things that you do wrong. And so no matter the fact that I tell you what sin, what hamartia really means, you're programmed to hear it another way. So you might even say, yeah, I like that. But what we've already learned is going to suck us back into that reality.
Yeah.
And but the fact is, hamartia, the primary meaning and the only meaning that makes sense in the entire Bible and literally has an impact on your life. I mean, the body of sin, what do you do with that? I never knew. Then when God showed me what it really meant, it was like, oh, it's the body of error. That's the body of knowledge I have that isn't true, that I believe is true, and so I'm living it. Oh my God. So if I'm living things that aren't true, that means I'm living lies. That means I'm living in a way that is not consistent with what God knows to be true. But if I knew what God knew to be true or knows to be true the way he knows it, I would automatically be living what I believe, which would be the truth. I mean, it's like, how have we missed this? I don't know, man. But well, actually, I do know how we've missed it. But that's where I'm at. I wanted to build a foundation of all the words and all the phrases in the New Testament that maybe they can be translated the way they're translated. Often they can't be. They make it up. But maybe it can be translated the way it is translated. But I decided, as I told you previously, that I needed to rethink the faith because it was not working for me. Maybe all of God's promises are working for everyone else the way that God says, but they weren't working for me. So I wanted a new approach, and I just went to God and said, teach me. I've got to know what you know the way you know it. And the day I prayed that prayer, it came out of my mouth, and I thought, wow, where'd that come from? Father, I want to know what you know the way you know it. I want to believe what Jesus believes the way he believes it. I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
I want to know what he knows. And the fact is, he wants me and you and everyone else to know what he knows the way he knows it. He's a father. That would be stupid that God would create families and moms and dads who teach their kids and want to teach their kids what they know is true, what they know is right. That'd be crazy that God could create families like that, but that he would be different. That he doesn't want to teach us what he knows. He wants us to know a different body of knowledge so that, and I don't want to get into the rest of that subject at the moment. I've just been, I wanted to begin showing people the massive amount of words that really mean something else. And the fact is that yes, in some cases they can be translated the way they are translated. But as we've talked about in the lexicons just like a regular English dictionary. It's often got definition 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. And so you've got all the theologians, all the translators who decide that a word means something. There may be 5 possible definitions of the word, but everybody has piled on that one definition. And usually, in my opinion, it's because that definition makes the sentence or the verse or the word or whatever say what they think it should say. And so there you go. But what about if God meant definition number 2? Well, that goes against what they believe and want to believe. So it's not even an option. Here is the definition, number 5. That's it. And I began to look and say, man, there's just something wrong here. And I began to see. I started this years ago when a friend of mine named Malcolm said that Jesus used the word Abba and to call it talking about Father. Well, I went to the Greek, and no, I didn't find any evidence that Jesus had used the word Abba. But as I began to study it, I realized, yeah, the Greek is translated into English, and so Father was the logical choice for the word of pater in not that's in the going too many directions at one time. That pater was the not excuse me that the word father was the right definition when in fact Jesus spoke in Hebrew to his father. He was Hebrew, that was his language. But when he spoke in Greek, he wouldn't have used Abba, he would have used father. I believe the Greek word is pater. It's been a while since I looked at it. I just know that I just learned that Jesus used the word Abba, and Paul even referred to that in Romans. And so I thought, well, if Jesus would have called Abba, then I'm going to call him Abba. And that's been many, many years ago. He is, to me, Abba, which encompasses father, daddy, papa, anything that's an affectionate term, or otherwise. The Jews had one word, as I've said, Abba, and Ab is short for Abba. And so I began to have this craving for a relationship with God that I had been taught was not possible because we were adopted by God. And so, yeah, he's our father, but it's an adopted father.
Right.
And that's the way when anybody hears the word adoption, they think of separation. That yes, it's if somebody is adopted into a family, there's a union there, but it's not exactly the same because the adopted child doesn't have the same DNA. It's there's something that just in my own mind, when I think of me being adopted by God, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm made a part of his memory. But then the way some translations say, God could cut me out anytime he wants. So I'm really not, unless I toe the line and do the right things.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's just one example. The word for adoption means to make a son. Now, again, make a son, that could be understood as to adopt. I understand that's how they got there. Right. But really and truly, it's more like the way we use in English where we say, mom and dad say, well, we're going to make a baby. Okay. Right. They're not going to create a baby. They're going to conceive a baby and give birth to that baby. Right. And in fact, that's exactly what the New Testament says over and over and over. However, translations do it in such a way that that fact, which is plain in the Greek, is completely missed by everyone. So we don't understand that God didn't adopt us in the way that we understand today, that we were born into God's family because we were born out of God inside Christ. I mean, this is indisputable unless you just decide to translate the Bible so that it doesn't say that. And that, what I've just said, would probably scare the bedaddle out of a lot of people because all of a sudden it puts them in a situation of, well, who am I? Oh my God. No, I can't be that. I'm a grasshopper. No, I'm a sinner saved by grace. And that's just the mercy of God that he hasn't destroyed me already. No, John, no. Just shut off Campbell, turn off the TV. For somebody that wants that, Okay, fine, turn off the TV. But some of us, like me, I wanted more. I just, if he's my father, then he's my father. And as I read in the Greek and I saw over and over and over, and I said, why have I always translated it this way? Why does everybody else translate it this way when you could translate it this way? And if you do translate it this way, man, that puts me where I want to be. That puts God where he is. I mean, where what's important, the family connection, in fact, even John says that we have his DNA. It calls it the seed. The seed, it's sperma. Read it in the Greek, where John in First John in his epistles, he talks about that we have the seed of God. It's God's sperma. That's DNA. And it's like we're born out of him. So we literally right now are other than what we think we are. God isn't other than us. We're other than who we think we are. It doesn't change who we are. We are inside Christ. We are children of God, born out of him in the resurrection. Oh man, can I go places with that? And it's utterly wonderful. So I was thinking this morning, let me see if I can find it again. When God talks to us, God is never going to lie to us. I know that because he is love, and love never lies. Love always tells the truth. Well, a word that really is popular, I've heard, hear it all the time. I guess we've talked about it a few times, is the word reality. God, when God speaks, he always talks about reality, about his reality. And we have to understand God has a reality. He is in heaven. And whatever heaven is, he is in that reality. That's where he is. And Jesus is in the same reality. And in fact, inside Jesus, we can easily say is reality. There is nothing inside Jesus that is not real. There's nothing wrong inside of Jesus. I mean, if Jesus was sick or injured, well, that would be contrary to what the scripture says, that he rose from the dead and he was free of everything.
Yeah.
So because, well, this is what I wrote down that I've been thinking about it, and I wanted to share this with you.
Okay.
When the God speaks, it's always about reality, and it's always about his reality. False realities, I slid this in, do not rule me. And in actuality, Paul said that in Romans. He didn't use this language. He used different language that said, sin shall not have dominion over you. Well, sin shall not have dominion over you. I think that's Romans 6:14. I mean, that doesn't even make sense. Well, that's because it's such a poor translation with such a poor understanding of the Greek grammar and the definitions of the words that it doesn't make sense. Never made sense to me. But now I understand that sin shall not have dominion over me. The shall is in the future tense, but it can be read another way, which nobody does that I know of. Error an error is both false knowledge and the believing of false knowledge. When you agree with false knowledge, that's error. So it's error to believe with error, to believe error. And so error shall not have dominion over you. The word dominion really means to rule, to lord. So error shall not have dominion over you. The shall, that sounds like future tense. Well, yeah, it is future tense. But there's another way to read it, and this, the way I read it is that it's the definitive future, which means that in the future, sin will not have dominion over you. It will not rule you. When you believe knowledge, whatever the knowledge is, that's going to determine the reality that you live.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're believing false knowledge, you're going to, as a creator, just like God, you are going to create in your mind a false reality. You've believed false knowledge. Anything we build is based on what we know. We can't build anything based on what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we have false knowledge, we are automatically going to create using that false knowledge. But what we create is going to be false. It's going to be an illusion. And it can be because of the nature of who God made us, who we are, but like him, we can create things that literally are, knock on wood, they're real. And you see the reality we've created.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But what we've done is when we've created this reality, anything that we have, any knowledge we have used to create this reality that is not true adds a dimension of falsity to what we've created. So that literally we can't always be sure that what we're looking at is there. Well, what we're seeing is really the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So when I appear, when I'm living my life and I appear to be inside a false reality because I've learned enough to know, okay, this looks real, but it isn't. But I don't know what's real and what's not real in it. But I'm just going to say that something in this is wrong. It's unreal. It's not true. Which means some of this that I see doesn't even exist. But to me, it's very real. But it can't exist because it's built on or built by using false knowledge. And false knowledge is knowledge that doesn't exist except in someone's head.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, when I appear to be inside a false reality, and I recognize, okay, something's wrong here, Abba is reminding me that I am inside his reality. So literally, I was born out of God inside Christ into God's reality. And inside his reality, I have created my own reality. And my reality that I've created is usually not even going to look close to his reality. Mm-hmm. But it's the reality that I'm living. The guy sitting next to me is going to have a different reality. Sometimes we can see the same things, but even when we're looking at the same things, oftentimes we're seeing something totally different. I mean, this is wild.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the way we work. The whole world, everything. I'm describing to you the whole way the whole system works. And so the issue that we're dealing with today, we're inside God's reality, so we're safe. We're as safe as we could ever. We can't be more safe because we're inside Christ. Mm-hmm. And inside Christ can and most theologians, people won't argue with that. They'll roll their eyes. But we're inside Christ. So whatever can't be inside Christ can't be inside us, no matter what it looks and feels like, no matter what the doctor says or anybody else says. It can't be because we're inside Christ, who died and rose again, whole and complete. And Paul said in Colossians, we are complete in him. We are whole. We are filled up. We're we're fine. We're safe inside him. So the reason I wanted to go here today, because I'm looking at what's going on in the world today, in our nation, and around the world, and I'm saying the only problem we've got is all the lies and fake knowledge that we've believed, that have been bred into our thinking for millennia before Jesus came. There was a drastic change in all of that I'm saying between the Old and the New Testament. We'll get into that sometime because it's easy to understand. I think it is. But this is such an important subject, because the only thing that is going to change what's going on in the world right now is people believing what God believes, believing the truth. He has a reality, and his reality is a reality that we were born into. I mean, can you imagine that parents give birth to their child and then immediately go put him in a different reality than theirs? But that's essentially what they're saying God did. That God gave birth to us, and now he's put us in a different reality, and somehow we've got to do the right things, and one day we'll either get into his reality, or that he'll just, at some point in time, so we don't know when and how, most of us, or some of us at least, will get into God's reality, and the rest are just going to go wherever people who don't believe what Jesus believes believe.
Right.
And it's like, no, don't you understand? God wants every single human being is capable of believing, knowing and believing what God knows and believes. And literally, we'll find that our reality will change, because our reality, every one of us, something about our reality changes every day as we learn something that we didn't know. And the problem is, as I've already spoken about, that when we are born out of God inside Christ, he plants, he puts all of his instruction in our hearts and our minds. We know everything we need to know. That's not the problem. The problem is all that we know and believe that isn't true, that we don't know isn't true. And some of it, much of it, most of it, we learned long ago, so we don't have any concept of some of the things that we really know and believe. And that has caused us to create realities, and we're living in a reality that God says, that's not yours. That's an illusion. It's an illusion. But we're going to bring you into my reality by teaching you what I know. And I just believe that I don't just believe it. I can't believe something if I don't know it. So I believe that God wants us with all of his heart, every one of us, to know what he knows and believe what he believes, and that he has been working for a long, long time to bring us from this fake knowledge and realities that we experience into being able to see what he sees. And like I said, during every day, our realities change. We may not even realize it, but our realities change as we learn new knowledge that we weren't aware of. And unfortunately, because oftentimes the new knowledge we learn is not what God agrees with. God doesn't say that's true, but it looks true to us. It feels true to us. Everybody else says it's true. It's always been this way, so it must be true. So what do I do with what God says? Well, I don't really know, but I come up with some sort of reasoning in my mind that allows two contradictory pieces of knowledge to live side by side in harmony. The people that just heard all of this, some of them probably didn't like it, but some of them say, there's something to this, because in their own minds, they're going to say, yeah, I'm experiencing this, but yeah, I see how sometimes I believe this is true, uh, but I also believe this is true, and
Yeah.
they don't fit.
Yeah.
And this is it's a wild subject, but it's the reason I'm going now. I mean, I planned on not getting to here for another year.
Yeah.
Um,
It's okay.
but the world needs to know the hope that we have, and that hope is not a maybe in the future. That hope is expectation. We need to know what God wants us to expect. See, we've been taught we can't expect anything from God. We can hope for it, but we can't expect it.
Mm.
No, God wants us to expect what he has said. Everything God says is real.
Mm.
It's reality. How we deal with the fact that, yes, what God says is real, but my experience is contrary to what is real.
Yeah.
What do I do with that? Well, people have automatically defaulted that, well, what God says will be in the future or some other time, even though God says it's already true. The
Yeah.
Greek was oftentimes translated for things that are already, in fact, the Greek constantly is taking the aorist tense and translate. Aorist tense is the past tense. It's a simple past tense. And the Greek uses it a lot, the writers of the New Testament. But oftentimes, if you get in there and you look at verses with the aorist tense, they'll be translated present tense or future tense because the translators cannot apparently conceive how something can be past tense. And so there's often things that God says are past tense, but in our reality, in our paradigm, the way that we live, our experiences and things, it is impossible, literally impossible, that what God says really is past tense. So the aorist must mean something else in these configurations. And so they will take something that's past tense from God and translate it future or present. And we don't have time to get into how that works. But when you finally see it, you go, oh my, wow. You mean, God, you've already done things that we're waiting for you to do? How could it be that you've already done things we're waiting for you to do when we can't see what you've done? So you can't have done it. Because if you had done it, then we would have seen it. We'd
Right.
experienced it. So,
Right.
and that's where people are. And that's a
Yeah.
legitimate concern. And what do you do with that? And so you just go along with the flow of what's always been because that's always been the way it is, and it can't be any other way. And
Mm.
I'm telling you, Lee, and you know me, that yeah, it can be other than what you're thinking, but
Yeah.
it's going to require a new way of thinking. And the only way that you're going to have the new way of thinking is understanding words that the way God meant for them, and to understand the syntax and understand why this word comes before this word instead of the other way around. Because in English, two words one in one order makes sense, but if you reverse the order, it can change the meaning of the sentence.
Right.
And we're comfortable with the meaning that we've always had, and to try to change it back to what it is, it just mentally we can't grasp it. We
Right.
don't understand how. Okay, if you understand that what I'm saying is real and is true, then how do I get back? How do I reverse it? How do I get back to thinking like God, to thinking His words the way He said them?
Hmm.
It's really easy. It doesn't, but see, we're so used to things happening quick. Everything we want it right now. It's got to happen quick. This is God looks at us as children, but more than children, infants. Oftentimes, he talks about, even though it's not translated necessarily, he'll talk about us as infants or little children.
Hmm.
How long did it take you to grow up to be where you are right now? 30 plus years.
40 plus.
40.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It took, and you're still growing. The
Right.
growth was not fast, and you can't make it go faster.
Right.
All you can do is learn to obey God the way that I defined it based on the Greek. You learn to obey God, and you keep obeying him. You
Yeah.
keep pondering and
Yeah.
thinking and talking to yourself
Yeah.
and talking to others and listening to his truth.
Yeah.
And as you continue to let that absorb into your mind, it literally transforms the way you think. It's
Yeah.
not an overnight process.
Yeah.
However, I have had it happen overnight many, 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 many times.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
got to the point where it happened so often that I began to expect it. And then when I found that things were moving slower and slower, and I realized God had just done something special in me to enable me to see something that I couldn't see if it didn't happen fast. So
Yeah.
it didn't happen fast, and now I understand it. But now my growth is just the growth of a child. I mean,
Right.
like I said, I'm 2 years old or 3 years old, in my opinion, because
Right.
I look at the vast knowledge that God has, and that He wants to teach me everything He knows. There is no overnight in that one. That
Right.
is forever.
Yes.
Okay. And moreover, based on the definition that I have, which I've talked about, we will again sometime.
Yeah.
But it's He loves us with a passion that we don't comprehend because of all that we see and feel and experience and all the other people that are suffering. We just look at that, and it's just hard to believe that God can be that passionate about us. It's more like, well, I can be passionate. I'm passionate about you, but, or if.
Right.
Oh, no. We got to remember we are living in his reality, and the reality that we are experiencing right now is twisted and distorted because of fake, false knowledge. And that's the reason that all the wars are going on in the world. That's the reason for all of the internal problems in our country, all the people who want to destroy the nation, that they want to take control of the nation. Their only problem is they're just believing things that aren't true. And those things have been built into them for so long, they don't want to imagine that things can be any other way than the way they see it. And they'll refuse to even agree to listen. I mean, they'll cancel you. They don't want to hear the truth. But God says, I'm real, and I'm not going to stop. And I'm never going to tell you anything that isn't real. I am going to tell you what is real. And by the way, the word truth, aletheia in Greek, okay, it's translated truth. But you'll actually find some lexicons that'll tell you that it'll be truth, comma, reality, or reality, comma, truth. No one ever uses reality, but that's that I've heard or that I've read. But that's what truth is. Truth is reality. True is real. It's an
Right.
adjective, and it's what's real. And so if you start, whenever you see the word truth, if you change it to real or reality, it'll be a different perspective. It's like when you see the word obey or obedience, that it's to submit to hearing and hearing and hearing and thinking and pondering and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And there's so many words that when you start repeating the verse to yourself with the true word, the Bible will begin to make sense like it has never before made sense.
Yeah.
And a lot of the contradictions and conflicts that you encounter go away, because in the Greek, there is no contradiction. It's all right. It's straight. God didn't screw up at all.
Right.
The only problem is there's a few verses here and there where some subsequent scribes of the New Testament changed some words or took some words out, but those are pretty much minor. I mean, it's not enough that I think it's dangerous.
Right.
It just, I can think of one verse, Romans 8:1, that is utterly beyond marvelous what it says, but the last half of the verse has been taken out because, as far as I can see, there isn't a translator that understands that last verse. It just doesn't make sense.
Huh.
It makes great sense.
As you were talking, there were things popping in my head about the things you were saying. You know how sometimes like your mind will wander?
Yeah.
Like my mind wasn't wandering. And it was just taking it and like applying it in places I've seen it and going, ah. I remember having a conversation with my oldest son, and he was so frustrated because we were going to church and he was hearing something that was good and he was frustrated that he didn't have it and experience it. And I said, it takes time to get it. And I said, buddy, he was like 12 or 13 at the time. And I said, it took you 12 or 13 years to learn this wrong. It might take you a few years to learn it right. Like it,
Yeah.
because that's how we learn.
Yes.
It is a process. And
Yes.
you're right. Sometimes it's overnight. Sometimes I remember when my dad was teaching me math, I think we talked about this. I kept thinking that it was, 1000. And he was like, no, that's 1,000. And I was like, no, that's 1000. And he was like, that's 1,000 though. And I was like, I'm not, you're telling me that something that is this is something else. And you're wrong and you're crazy and you're trying to trick me or something. Like, I don't understand why you're making this harder on me. But he knew that was 1,000, and then 10,000 and 100,000. And I just struggled so hard with those numbers and concepts when I was, I don't know, third, fourth, fifth grade, something, whenever you're learning some of that stuff. And I was so frustrated and, crying. And he's like, quit crying, but now I know it. And that was kind of an overnight, but it took me, weeks or months of looking at it. And it was I just couldn't get it. And then it just made sense. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's easy. And I couldn't see how I didn't get it before. I was like, what was it? Like, and I was so confused and so frustrated. And then when I got it, it just made perfect sense. So to tie that to everything you're saying, it can be a process. It can happen fast. But usually it's a process. Some stuff is, some stuff's quick, but you're right about the church and how they want it to be so fast. People, not just the church, everywhere.
Yeah.
And especially if God he's supposed to be magic and he's supposed to do it like this. It's supposed to be, Jesus touching the leper and he's not a leper anymore, or touching the blind man and he's not blind anymore. And that stuff, we'll get into that too. I would love to explore miracles, right?
Yeah.
But it was, like that stuff can happen, but it's often really gradual and teaching and
Because
learning and remembering.
growth is gradual, know?
Yeah. And no. So anyway, that was amazing. I was enriched. I hope viewers are enriched by it. So I loved it and I so appreciate it. And I'm sure even everything you said didn't all get into me because that's not always how it works.
It's
but
repetition.
I heard it.
repetition.
Yep, I heard it and it hit me, and it's gonna keep, it could be this afternoon, it could be in 5 minutes, it could be in 10 years. I just go, oh my gosh, I'm seeing something and it's not real, and I get it.